Ghost Recon Wildlands is an open-world America Topples a Government game where you play as Nomad, a strong leader type with quippy one-liners such as
Shitballs.
The big baddie of this game is El Sueño, a brutal leader of the Santa Blanca cartel. El Sueño and his cartel have taken over the country of Bolivia. The Bolivian government still exists, somewhere, but the majority of the government has been corrupted and replaced by Santa Blanca. The Ghosts, which is Nomad and his crew, plus Karen Bowman, are tasked with removing El Sueño from power and collapsing the Santa Blanca cartel's hold on Bolivia. This is achieved by eliminating key personnel and destabilizing Santa Blanca's operations in Bolivia. The game does an excellent job presenting the player with what they might want to go after with the TAC map destabilization menu. There are 4 paths that you can choose to get to El Sueño. You only have to complete 2 in order to unlock the final mission and beat the game. Those paths available are security, smuggling, influence, and production. For my playthrough, I chose security and production, since if they have no money, they can't afford to buy weapons, ammo, vehicles, etc. I chose security because if the goal is to remove the one in power, then removing the personnel responsible for his protection would be a good start. This is a fantastic story and system that they have in place for a fun game where your actions are reflected in the world, and you are able to see your progress as you continue to destabilize and weaken Santa Blanca. What do you mean? What do you mean their actions have very little effect on the open world? Our progress through the destabilization tree means nothing? It's nothing more than just cutscenes? Who developed this game?
Oh my goodness!
Ubisoft. What a perfect setup for an open world RPG, where the players could customize their character and choose different paths to get to El Sueño, and those paths would impact the world that the player is currently in, and possibly even having different ending missions based on the path they chose. But instead, I was just given open world slop. Let me explain. The gameplay of Ghost Recon Wildlands goes like this. You enter a zone, you get a briefing from Bowman about the Buchon. I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher this all video. Please bear with me. You gather intel on this Buchon before you can do the story missions. The actual content for this area is the story missions. The intel gathering is nothing more than running into a compound in an open world setting, snapping a few photos or grabbing a few documents and leaving. There's nothing more to this other than padding out the gameplay and adds no value to the gameplay loop. Once you're able to start the story missions, you learn more about the Buchon and their whereabouts, whether it be finding a way to drive out the Buchon from hiding, or using their assets to get to them to come to the negotiating table. This part of the game where player choice could have been a bigger impact or added a little bit more spice, so that when you do this for the 20th time or the 25th time, it's just the repetition is what kills this system. Completing 3 to 4 of these story missions unlocks yet another story mission, but this time it's a confrontation with the Buchon. Rinse and repeat 2 times, and you'll have all the Buchons done required to remove the underboss. Repeat 4 times to unlock the Head of X mission. Repeat 8 times to unlock El Sueño. Before we go too far with the gameplay aspect, let's reel it back into the destabilization aspect. The characters, in regards to all the Buchons, all the way up to Head of X, were all memorable, even if the mission regarding them was not. Let me elaborate. Each character in the game have their own briefing with Bowman. These briefings are optional cutscenes that add context to what that person does, who they're connected to, and why it's important to remove them. Some characters will give you perspective from El Sueño, and his opinions and actions against them. This aspect of building background on these pawns, where we barely interact with them, makes the missions memorable. Switching back to the gameplay, most of these interactions in-game are either eliminate the target or extract with the target. Sure, we get some dialogue between the characters when they're fighting or extracting, but it's all meaningless and usually just shit-talking or banter. Unfortunately, there is no Raiden versus Armstrong moments where they're having a debate between ideals and ideologies and XYZ. Even in the confrontation with El Sueño, it's just it's just underwhelming. Alright, enough about the destabilization mechanic for now. Let's dive into the gameplay. Since it's an open world game, the points of interest are scattered everywhere across the map, with some being interesting like massive underground networks of tunnels used by the Unidad military, or cities being converted into massive prisons. There are others that are less interesting like lifeless towns. While I'm here talking about aesthetics, I adore the fact that each region of the map feels unique in some way, like the jungles and rivers of the east compared to the salt lakes in the west. The massive writing on the side of this mountain also added a lot to the aesthetics and like the appeal, I guess you could say. Anyways, the gameplay loop is outdated mechanics from Far Cry 3 era of gaming. As stated previously, the repetition with the Buchon elimination gets old quickly, and the fetch quests, intel gathering eventually becomes how fast can you smash this helicopter into the compound, snap some photos, and leave. All of the optional content consists of defend this point from the enemy so the rebel support call-ins can get buffed, or place a tracker on the supply crate in the middle of nowhere. When assaulting compounds, if you go loud, the best thing to do is just fly in with a helicopter with missiles and just flatten the place. Or if you don't want to go with that setup, you find an area where the AI is stupid and set up a kill box because they'll just brainlessly run into your line of fire over and over. If you go the stealth route, almost every compound is open and more often than not has more than one vantage point where you can just sit with the sniper and pick off most of the enemies. The map went for a quantity over quality approach, and it really shows, because a lot of the smaller compounds just kind of blur into a snipe fest. There isn't a non-lethal option besides running up to people and kicking them in the balls, and there is no reward for being stealthy or non-lethal. So it eventually just degrades into speedrunning these compounds and missions with helicopters, explosives, and whatever else. The wanted mechanic is awful. All it does is it just throw cars full of men at you, and then it becomes a wave defense game against helicopters. Traversal isn't fun. The choices are car on windy mountain roads, which you're probably going to fall off of, helicopters, and planes. But the planes aren't fast, and they don't have weapons, so you're just using helicopters and fast travel most of the time to get around. The game tries to make harder enemies, but you just need a bigger gun to deal with them. My loadout most of the time consisted of an LMG and an AR with an underbarrel grenade launcher. If I chose a sniper, it was because I was playing stealthy. I absolutely hate the skill tree, and I think all of the upgrades are superficial at best and outright annoying at worst. Like the vehicle damage being tied to a perk rather than the weapon being used. Why would an LMG laying into a helicopter do less damage because I didn't take a perk in a perk tree? Alright, I've been pretty negative so far, so let's talk about some things that I did enjoy. There are a lot of guns in the game, but the gunplay is weak, and I never really strayed too far from what worked. There's a lot of gun customization, but it really doesn't make that big of a difference. I like that you could switch between first person and third person, and that taking cover was a magnetic system, and it wasn't like you had to press a button to get there. Yeah, that's about all I can praise gameplay-wise. Let's talk about the world they've already created. As we've already established, the setup for the story is good. The optional cutscenes are good. The whole destabilization mechanic is good. So what went wrong? The lack of player impact on the world. That's what went wrong. As the player goes about systematically destroying the cartel's control, or production, or whatever else they may have been destroying or dismantling, the world around the player should reflect the actions that the player took. If the player removed the lead training personnel for the cartel, then the cartel should field less elite troops, or the AI for the cartel members should be even worse than it already is. If the player made connections with the Unidad and converted key members to the resistance movement, then the Unidad should become hostile towards the cartel, or at the very least, neutral towards the rebels. If the player removed the cartel's source of income, then the cartel should field less vehicles with turrets, or the cartel members should have more Uzis and pistols rather than AKs and armor. These are just a few things that could have changed with the elimination of a few targets, and all of it should have been reflected in the final mission as well. Say reducing the training for the cartel reduced the amount of SAM sites and helicopters operating in the final mission. Speaking of the final mission, The whole thing seems like it just got shoehorned in because it rushed development or someone's vision didn't get realized. It feels incredibly weak and rushed. The betrayal from the rebels makes almost little to no sense, and even if you were in my playthrough, I didn't even give them anything to strengthen the rebellion. I kind of just ignored them. So now all of a sudden they're like a formidable force. I've never interacted with them. I've never gave them more resources. I've never did any of their content. They were never really more useful to me than just gathering intel. They've built this whole world for the player to mess around with, and nothing in the world matters. In the regions, the player removes the Buchon. The cartel is still operating in the cities there. In one of my trips around the city, there was a group of rebels celebrating on one end of the city, shooting guns in the air, and then down the road was a cartel compound still operating in the same city. Did they forget to liberate the city? What are they celebrating? Why isn't either faction trying to remove each other from the city? The cities themselves are lifeless, as all the NPCs do is just walk around aimlessly. Alright, I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent here. The whole point of the Ghosts is to not officially be in Bolivia. Definitely not there to meddle with the government's affairs.
As Americans, we aren't here, remember?
So why does nobody care about trying to blend in? Clearly they're Americans, based on what they're wearing, the language they're speaking, the guns they're using, and the fame that they have with the rebels. And the fact that even El Sueño knows about them. This is also set in, what, 2019? Anyone with a smartphone would blow the whole thing out of proportion. Like, there's zero sense of trying to do anything stealthy. Especially because there's no repercussions for being loud and stupid. The game encourages you to be loud and stupid, and rewards you in no way for being stealthy and actually trying to do the premise of the game. There's so much dissonance between the story and the presentation of in the gameplay. It just makes it hard to take the game seriously. Especially when the main character is constantly making horrible one-liners, and it's just... and he's not taking it seriously either. The game itself is a horrific setting where civilians are being burned, hung, and melted into their elements of the periodic table, and the main character is just like, shitballs. That's pretty bad. You know, that's just life. Alright, the game, tonally, is incredibly dark, and the game never seems to acknowledge that. It's like the developers for this game had a vision, and it was going to be grim and dark, and showing the worst that humanity has to offer. And the supporting evidence I have for this is in the beginning cutscene, where they're talking about, like, the worst that humanity has to offer.
I'm sure you've seen the horrible, fucked up shit humans are capable of when there are zero repercussions. But let me tell you right now, no matter how you compartmentalize, how you desensitize, you can't prepare for El Sueño.
Then the suits at EA came in and they're like, hey, if it's grim and dark, how are we supposed to sell our Fortnite skins and loot boxes? And then something happened where maybe the devs or the creative director, whoever had a vision, lost their vision or was unable to achieve the vision, and then we got this. Everything from the beginning of the game seems like they wanted the player to have an impact on the world and on the story, but something along the way went wrong, and we got uninspired Ubisoft open world trash, or slop, with terrible game elements like fetch quests and weapons being scattered across the map just to pad out the gameplay time. This game, unfortunately, is the definition of wide as a lake, deep as a puddle, and it infuriates me. The worst part of it all is that I had fun playing this game. Not because the gameplay was fun, but the premise of the story was enticing, and I wanted to know how it ended. I wanted to know why Walker didn't trust Bowman. I wanted to see the effort that I was putting in was going to make a difference at the end of the game. All I was left with was disappointment and anger that this game could have been a grand slam 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 game, but it wasn't. I didn't even know what I would rate this game out of 10. Honestly, it's just disappointment out of 10. Don't buy this game. If you're looking for an open world game with fun gameplay, go play Just Cause 3. If you're looking for a stealth game with in-depth mechanics, just go play Metal Gear Solid 5. Don't settle for this bargain bin stealth game. Alright, this is the part of the video where I compare Ghost Recon Wildlands to Just Cause 3 and Metal Gear Solid 5. Fair warning though, I haven't played Metal Gear Solid 5 or Just Cause 3 in a few years. But in Just Cause 3, even in a game where the game doesn't take itself very seriously, the player still has an impact on the world and the sandbox that the player is in. When Rico liberates a city, the citizens come out and play music and cheer on the town square. They cheer Rico on.
Take a speed.
Malaya has been set free, my friend. The Dissonant militia, or as it's more often called, the DRM, has been tossed out.
When the compounds are liberated, the rebels show up and it's occupied by the rebels. The world reacts to the player's actions, and that's kind of the whole point of Just Cause, besides blowing stuff up and flying around with a parachute, grappling hook, and wingsuit. Gameplay-wise, Just Cause 3 has no stealth elements, but it has a wide variety of toys to play with, like the aforementioned grappling hook, the different types of guns ranging from dual-wielding pistols to 4-shot rocket launchers. Even the vehicles are fun because the map is designed for racing, challenges, and optional content. The vehicles can also be used for combat as well, ranging from tanks to fighter jets. This is just absent, or not, it's absent or poorly implemented in Ghost Recon Wildlands. Metal Gear Solid 5, on the other hand, is a stealth game, but you can go loud in that game. Going loud in Metal Gear Solid 5 is harder than it is in Wildlands because Metal Gear Solid 5 has all different types of call-ins, and the enemies tend to be a little smarter. They'll coordinate better. You can hear everything that the enemies are saying on the radio. And just atmosphere-wise, like, hearing the panic in the voice of the soldier that you just... you're just harassing at this point if you don't kill him. And hearing the CP trying to figure out how to coordinate, how to eliminate this target that's assaulting their station or compound, from like mortar call-ins to sending support to them, it's just so much more in depth. Also, in Metal Gear Solid 5, they have the buddy system. They have D-Horse, D-Dog, Quiet, all of these things that are way more useful and unique compared to the dumb AI buddies that Wildlands gives you. And I understand that's not the point of Wildlands. The point of Wildlands was to be like a co-op open world with other people. But I don't have friends that will play this game. Well, I have one friend who will play this game, but he's not... he is not gonna be very useful. On top of this, the stealth mechanics in Metal Gear Solid 5 are just superior in every way. The enemies will react to how you play. They will wear helmets if they're being headshot a lot. They'll put on body armor if they're being shot in the body. They'll put claymores and decoys down if you're being very stealthy. The enemy in Metal Gear tries to counter your tactics, and that doesn't exist in Wildlands. In Wildlands, the places you visit just rise in difficulty because that's the location on the map, and it has a higher star rating. And it's not based on how you go about destroying or whatever you're doing to the compounds. If you're going in with a helicopter, grabbing the intel and leaving, then the the next compound should have more defenses against a helicopter. Another thing that Metal Gear Solid 5 has is the interrogation function. If you grab a soldier from behind, you can interrogate him to figure out where resources are, where other enemies are. That also isn't there in Wildlands. When comparing the resources from Metal Gear Solid 5 to Wildlands, the resources in Metal Gear Solid 5 aren't that big of an issue because when you upgrade your mother base, your home base, you can produce more of these resources passively to where you don't have to go out and farm them. While in Ghost Recon Wildlands, if you want a specific thing, you have to go out and farm it, which just pads gameplay time. And it's not like the farming aspect of the game is fun, running in and grabbing 60 fuel, which is meaningless with the amount of resources that you need. So you need to find the bigger ones, which are the optional side content, which is not fun either. And like, yeah, you get some resources from which buchon you take down, and each of them has their own respective thing, but it just doesn't matter. Because once you have an LMG and an underbarrel grenade launcher and a sniper, you've beaten the game. And another thing about Metal Gear Solid 5, they have the R&D department or whatever, their research and development, and that's how you get new weapons, and you pay resources and money to get those weapons, which I think is a far better mechanic than running around the map trying to find the weapon that you want, or having to go to like a wiki to be like, hey, where's the MP5 mod silencer in Ghost Recon Wildlands? And then you have to go to that specific location, get that one specific piece of loot, and now you have it. It's just outdated, and it's not fun. Okay, I've spent enough energy and time on this shitballs game. I personally don't see how it has such a high rating on Steam, but perhaps I'm just tired of the Ubisoft formula, and I know that there's better alternatives out there. This game probably isn't made for me, as I would like games that are in-depth and have in-depth mechanics, and my actions are reflected, and all that good jazz. But, you know, I'm not a 40-year-old blue-collar worker at the ball-crushing factory who comes home to 7 children and only has the ability to play crappy Ubisoft games. I don't get it.
Where are you taking me?
Back to your friends.
Entonces Pacatari has made his deal with the malditos extranjeros, the young fool.
What? That was not the handbrake?
Go on, I'll be right with you.
How did you get here?
Let's get back to business.
Entonces Pacatari has made his deal with the malditos extranjeros, the young fool.
Take it up with him, senor.
Get back to business. This guy just jumps out of the car and lets the car coast into a tree. Let's get back to business. Let's get... Yeah, travel time is stupid. I don't know why in open world games do they have you travel between the two things? And like, in some games that's fine, because for instance in Just Cause 3 the traversal system allows for like fun ways to get around, and then there's stuff to do in between point A and point B. What am I supposed to be doing right now besides driving and listening to dialogue? Which already ended. There wasn't even enough dialogue to cover the commute. Yep. Fuck people. Okay, they just teleport above the car. You can't even hit them. Unidad drives big Ford trucks, while the rebels drive... Where did they get the minigun from? We sent out one radio broadcast, and all of a sudden they got like they got that truck, which is also American made, and then they put a fucking minigun on top of it. Who gave them that? Like, if that was like a 50 cal, sure. That's understandable. How they could get a 50 cal, especially if the US is quote unquote aiding them, but not really. But that, how did they get that minigun? Oh my god, chickens. Can I run them over? Dude, this game sucks. This game sucks!
We ought to be able to find some intel.
We ain't
around
here to run down civilians, dipshit.
What? What? What?
Hey,
That guy... Why do they all do this? What? This game's so fucking bad. Look at these guys out in the streets. They're just like... It's just crouching in the middle of the road. But this guy's
Keep
completely
an eye
fine.
on these kids. Make sure they stay out of our way.
This guy's perfectly okay. Oh my god, they put kids in the game. Like, this game it is now possible to select a specific time. Wow. This game has a lot of potential to be good. But it's really being held back by the fact that Ubisoft made it. And that's a shame. Like, hold on. Minor graphical thing. What is that? It's just a blob. It's just a blob that's supposed to be headlights. Which is cool that they actually rendered that far out. Like, most games won't render that far out, but it's just a circle. It's just a circle. Like, these are just moving circles. Like, I'm just playing Outer Wilds, and those are the stars in the distance. I mean, the game's pretty, don't get me wrong. Other than the animation of, like, the characters and stuff, I think the characters look really ugly. But, like, the terrain, the sounds of these guys, like, hitting you, all the little baby pebbles, and, like, how the character reacts to the slope and stuff, that's really, really cute. And all these, they bothered putting little colors out here, like all this yellow and the green, the rocks and stuff. This isn't just, like, kind of barren terrain. Like, they actually thought about someone walking through this part of the map. Even though there's really no reason for anyone to be out here, they still put that detail in, which is nice. And finally, the music kicked in. It only took me doing nothing for, like, 5 minutes. But the characters just look stiff. The animations for certain things just, like, that looked awful. That was like State of Decay 2 levels animation. And so, I don't know if these came out at the same time, but State of Decay 2 is old in my opinion.